Okay, yeah. So good morning, everyone, and hi, Flora, again. It's I think yeah, third or fourth time that we have these kind of chats, and I really I like those chats because it also gives me some thoughts, some food for thinking, and it's always good to be engaged. So just to briefly introduce myself, so my name is Stephan Gerschewski, and I'm a senior lecturer in international marketing at the University of Kent, Kent Business School, which you can see in the background. So that's a business school building. And yeah, I'm teaching mainly about marketing, international business, entrepreneurship. And apart from that, I wear a few other hats. I have my startup business, and I'm now also trying to get a qualification in coaching. So there's a lot of different things on my plate, and I have a personal interest and probably also a bit of an academic interest in the broad topic of the future of work. It started probably with the side hustle project 2 or 3 years ago at Henley Business School, and it evolved from there. And given COVID-19, everybody's talking about the future of work these days, including my students, including my dean. Everybody is now talking about working from home versus the role of the office generally. And I think today we can discuss some of these hot topics, hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And so what really kicked off the idea of having this as a next talking topic, and the topic this time around is how the perception of work is changing. Okay, and this was kind of initiated as an idea for a discussion point when I told you the story about my son and I. We were having a chat, and he had asked me for something, asked me to commit financially to one of his little projects, and I said, yeah, no, that's fine. I'll do something for you when I get paid. Now, just a bit of context, I've worked within the corporate space for almost 30 odd years. I decided to exit and run my own business. I'm now a professional coach and so on, as you know, a soft skills trainer and various other things. And so I've been working from home, and obviously that's been the main, and it kind of coincided with around the time the lockdown, COVID lockdown period kicked off. And so he has, from both my children, from sort of seeing me go to the office every day to see me now just permanently at home, sort of working from home as far as certainly he was concerned. And so when I made the statement about, giving him some money when I get paid, his immediate response was, with what? Some of it, and I looked at him like, what? In my mind, it was like, well, what do you think I've been doing all this time? I say I'm good, I'm working, and I'm on the laptop, and so what that invoked for me was, what is this whole change of what COVID has done in terms of this mass movement towards home working, remote working, and it being kind of like the normal language, as opposed to it being something that just a few organizations did that were perceived to be forward thinking. Now, whether traditional business or modern business, everybody's got their eyes and ears and hands on this way of working as a normal way, and so that also impacts on how we look at work in the future. And I guess for a lot of young people, my son is a generation Zer, and I guess for individuals like that are kind of at a young age witnessing this shift and this way in which parents, people they know that go into the office every day with their laptop bags or whatever, are now changing that. I just kind of wonder how this kind of perception of work, the future of work, but how we perceive work to be going future. And so this was kind of like the exchange that I just want to have. And really, you've really got quite a background, as you said, the side hustle future of work. And I just wondered some of your initial thoughts. What other things from your perspective are going to be the key influences that will drive the future of work, going forward, how we work and so on?
Yeah, I think there's a few things to consider. I mean, first of all, I think it all depends on COVID-19, how that will develop. I think that's a very big factor, and that is something outside of our control. So I assume, my personal opinion is, COVID-19 is here to stay for at least next year, and then probably even longer. But I also think because people are getting now very used to working from home, especially in the UK, there's been not that many people going back to the office, even though the lockdown has passed compared to, say, Germany or other countries, where people are less anxious to go back to the office. I think still people will think differently about working from home. I think in the past, before COVID-19, there was that kind of assumption or impression, or if you are working from home, you can't be productive and you are distracted and you have to be in the office from 9 to 5 or on your set working hours. But I think that mindset is shifting a bit because everybody has to do it. I mean, there's no other option. I mean, I remember in March, April, at the peak of the crisis, everybody didn't even leave the house almost. And you could, it was really kind of anxious, and people didn't know about coronavirus at that time, and so many people dying and so on. So I think it strongly depends on that factor, external factor, coronavirus, how that will evolve. But I think a second factor is then the evolution of technology. I think we are already very advanced with Zoom, what we are doing today. You can have all your meetings on Zoom, which I do, or Microsoft Teams, etc. There's a lot of good tools, productivity tools, also for collaboration if you're not in the same place, for remote working. And I think the third factor, which influences the future of work and remote working, is the leadership debate about how you manage your people, how you evaluate your people in terms of performance management. And that's a tricky one, because as the traditional manager or line manager who is then looking after you or who can see you on a daily basis, how do you evaluate performance, and what is the basis for evaluation, performance evaluation, and how do you lead people? And I think I was talking about my new qualification that I'm currently doing as a coach in emotional intelligence. And I think that's a big factor, because you need to trust your people as a good leader, I think, and you need to have those social communication skills, even though you can't see them, but people can feel whether you care for them or not, even though you don't see them. But if you are, open about challenges, if you listen to people, and if you care for them, even though you don't need to meet them on a daily basis, but if you give your employees and the people who work for you in the whole company, the corporate culture, I think that's a key thing going forward, regardless whether you are in remote working or in a face-to-face environment. I think, and that's one point I think that's also growing in importance in many industries, the importance of EI, emotional intelligence, rather than the traditional IQ, intelligence quotient, whether you have a title, you're a big boss and you do what you tell everybody what to do, I think. And also with the new generation, with the millennials, they want more freedom, they want more flexibility, often they want more kind of autonomy as well. And I think as a manager or as a leader, you have to kind of step back a bit and give the trust to people. That's what I would do if I were the dean of Kent Business School, for example, or of any organization. I would give autonomy to people and try to support them and trust them and care for them, and then they will fly. But if you do the other extreme, just as last point, micromanaging, and there's also that type of manager who is controlling every step, and you have to have weekly meetings and very tight control, that often can be quite demotivating for people.
A lot of really great points there. I mean, I was reading there was a recent article I read by one of the big consultancy companies out there, and they were talking about, because the reality is, as much as we know that the whole idea of remote working, home working is here to stay, the truth is that not every kind of work function could fit into that model. And the truth also is that for individuals, there are individuals out there that would actually not warm to the idea of actually being a home worker for whatever reason. They actually would not find themselves being as productive, because you know, it doesn't kind of work so much with how they thrive in a working sort of situation, certainly when you talk about things like productivity. But what was really interesting was that this article and this organization was really pushing that businesses, organizations really think about, really be embracing of the different ways and the different approaches to which remote working could work for them, subject to the kind of industry that they were in, the kind of business they ran, how they engage with their customers, the kind of working patterns of their people, and so on and so forth. So listen, all the points that you've made there are really great points. It's one thing about what's been happening in terms of all of us being forced on this big global working from home project has been we've also realized that it's also, as much as there are a lot of benefits to it in terms of the kind of work-life balance, possibly not always, the fact that it's done a lot in terms of helping, but not always, family relationships, right? That people have actually been able to save money in terms of not having to make big long commutes that usually would cost them quite a bit. The impact, the positive impact in some situations in terms of stress levels, the fact that you don't have to sit in traffic for loads of hours and all of that kind of stuff, and so on and so forth. So this is all true, but it has been difficult sometimes. And as someone like myself, and I know you as well, we are both people who enjoy the opportunity to work from home. There were certainly some struggles in terms of having sort of family around and finding that space and managing the noise and all those kind of distractions. So coming back to that whole thing about how even family, particularly young children, how they view, this whole being working from home and perceive work when they see somebody at home. What's your from your own personal perspective? How did your family, particularly your young children, how did they equate you working from home compared to you working on campus? Did they see you working did they perceive your work as being just as serious, do you think?
That's a good question. I haven't really thought about that, to be honest. But I mean, also my children are quite young, especially younger one. She's 7, the older one, she's 10. They're both in primary school. I think generally they really enjoyed spending more time with me personally as their dad. And I also had more freedom. I didn't have to commute to work, as you mentioned. There's a lot of stress, also financial, better off. And you spend more time at home naturally, also with your wife or partner. And I spent a lot of time with my children. I did a lot of activities. We have a very beautiful garden. So we did some camping in the summer in the garden. That was our holiday. And for the kids, they enjoyed it, and they really they slept for 1 week in the tent, and they didn't want to take it down. So I think they see me not so much as the kind of, they don't know really, I think, what I do at work. And I think the other thing is also they see me when I'm teaching, for example, the lectures. They see me, I'm talking to the laptop. They are very curious, naturally. As you know, kids are very curious, and they're very direct and open. And they, at the beginning, when it all started with Zoom and Microsoft Teams, they were, because I don't have my own home office, physical office, I have kind of a corner in the main living room. And so they sneaked in, and they were looking, what am I doing? And they saw my students on the screen, or when I had meetings. But it was very natural, and then I explained that to them. And they were also, I didn't mind when they came in, and then I even introduced my children to my students. I didn't mind, because I think they can see me as a human person. And I think, that's the other thing. We are not robots, we are not machines. And sometimes I feel, you have to be so professional. But actually, I think what people who work for you or students, they want to see the real you. And they find it funny, and for me it's also funny. And at the beginning was a bit embarrassing, but then if they say something in the background, I tell them please go back to their room, and things like that. It's just naturally. Or the doorbell rings and the parcel arrives from Amazon. You can't control these things sometimes, but I think that gives you a kind of, at least I would think, from a student perspective, that gives you a kind of very personal and intimate relationship almost with your students. They see you not as that kind of old and far from reality kind of professor, gray-haired, whatever they have in their mind, but the kind of person that has the same issues every day like they have working from home. So I think in the future also my children, I try to give them very open-minded perspective generally in life. When it comes to traveling, or when it comes to thinking about different things, or trying new food, or starting new habits. So I think they will see it as normal that having those Zoom meetings, because they know that already, and they are growing up, I think, with that kind of almost that kind of YouTube culture where everything is, or blogging culture where everything is online, and Instagram live videos. They are probably more professional, my older one especially, how to do that. Or it's kind of funny when we go traveling and I give her my smartphone. Sometimes she says, "Oh, Daddy, can I have your smartphone? I want to do a vlog, And I said, what is that? That's a video vlog. I didn't know the term actually. And then she was kind of making a video clip, and she's saying, "Oh, hi guys, this is Esther here in London. I'm here at London Eye." And it was kind of very natural for her.
There was something that you said earlier that reminded me of a meeting I had recently, and it was actually the beginning of a coaching session.
Emma.
And oh, hi.
Yes, I heard you. Okay.
And
talking about
exactly what you said, right? That's exactly what you were, the point that you were making. Planned. Yeah, that was exactly what the point you were making. And anyway, what happened was that as we were beginning the session, and we kind of had the kind of intro, just kind of checking in, the whole building rapport thing. And one of the things that she said in preparation before we got into the real session was, she said, she mentioned a few disclosures, and one of them was that she wanted to let me know that she was working from home, and her family was around, and as much as they know that they're to stay out of my office, but there may be the odd, and so I just want to sort of manage that expectation with you. And I thought to myself, you know what, that was quite a good thing for her to do, because just like you said, it's important that we stop being apologetic about that, and this whole thing about all of us being and coming across more as human beings, as opposed to being like really sort of panicked and everything. We remember the whole the funny BBC the guy whose daughter sort of kept coming in, and everybody found that hilarious. That went viral for ages. But then that's now everybody's reality. That was your reality just there. So a next question that I wanted to ask, and I know that we're coming to the end now, is that when we look at all the kind of generations, we talk about the baby boomers, the Generation X, generation, the millennials, and so on and so forth, and obviously Generation Z, etc. Particularly with the baby boomers, the Generation X, the millennials, in terms of their views of the future of work, with how and that whole sort of perception of how work is changing. How do you have a view as to how each of those groups, and it will be a very broad thing, obviously everybody's an individual, but do you have a view as to how each of those groups, particularly the baby boomers, I tend to find that the Generation X are sort of, they're a bit of one or the other, really. They aren't as distinctly different as your baby boomers and your millennials. Do you have a view as to how work is changing, and the perception of work is changing, is being perceived by those two groups in particular? Any views on that?
I think that's a very good question, because I think when I grew up, I didn't grow up with YouTube or Facebook or Instagram or Skype or any of those video technologies, video content. That was not there. There was not even email at that time. And I remember sending those long physical letters to my girlfriend, long distance relationship, sending parcels, very romantic, that kind of thing. And then technology came into my life with email first, and then beginnings of social media, Facebook, etc. So I think from my perspective, and from the older, from baby boomers even, yeah, I mean, they didn't know really what email is. Maybe some of them, they don't use it as such. So I think they have a different view when it comes to working. And I think also often, I mean, they have children, you know, they're a little bit older. And for them, probably they want to have a kind of, I don't want to generalize because it's quite hard.
Yes,
and
I know.
It's very difficult, but I think the difference is with the, say, the millennials, as I mentioned, my children, for example, they grow up with the internet, whether it's a force for good or bad. And I think we have to be really careful, not only focusing on the good things of technology, but there's a lot of tricky or unethical things as well. And I mean, that's a whole other discussion for the future, but that's also to keep in mind about all the benefits of technology. I love technology, but I think there's also, I'm not a machine, I'm not a robot. And, you know, AI is all good and things, and the future of work, Industry 4.0, but I mean, I still prefer to be talking to a human being and not to a robot. Or, you know, students, I'm sure they want to be taught not by a machine, but a real person. So I hope that that human element will still stay there, even though we make more and more advances with technology. But I think we have to be careful going the right kind of ethical way, and the decision-making process is very important. But I think generally the way it will go, I think technology will always play a big role. And I think a lot of companies, they are embracing that technology as well. I mentioned before Microsoft Teams, right? That's from Microsoft, the software. And my employer, University of Kent, they bought a license for Microsoft Teams. So everything we communicate is now through Microsoft Teams. And you can send chat messages, you can call people, you can see whether they're online, whether they're in a meeting. It's really very good, say kind of intranet tool where you can still collaborate with your co-workers and colleagues, even though you are not physically in the same building or same office. And I think they always have, I think another important point is you have to give people and your workers the flexibility and the freedom to choose. As you mentioned, there are some people who miss the kind of social aspect of being in the office. They want to socialize with people. They want to have a chat, want to have a coffee, go out for lunch together. And that's how they thrive, and they need that for their well-being. They may be single, or they may have not kids, so they need that interaction, and they need that social feeling, of course. And many of those, I think they miss working in the office and having that certainty of, you know, being in the office and socializing with people, etc. But then on the other hand, there's also people who have maybe a long commute through London every day, and they get stressed. They spend a lot of money on commute. It affects their well-being, and they don't like to be in the office. And the other point is they may be able to do their work from home more efficiently and more productively. And they are not bound to certain, say, work hours from 9 to 5, as it is, say, in a bank or in a kind of customer-facing role. Like for me, as an example, I'm an academic. I can work in the morning at 4 a.m. and I can write my papers or record my lectures. As long as the outcome is there, my employer will be happy. But I think for others in the bank, if you open your bank at 4 a.m., there's probably not many customers coming. And, you know, so it's industry specific.
Indeed.
I'm very grateful for having that flexibility. But I think what we see with a lot of employers, also big employers like, I think I read Ernst & Young or some of the consulting companies, they say working from home until next year. And they give employees the freedom to choose. And I think that's quite important, because then what happens, you trust your people, and they will give back that trust to you through better performance. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the ideal
Yeah,
case, but
exactly. I was going to say ideally.
there's also of course the downside. How, and I think it comes back how you control and the performance management
Yeah.
part. But I think for me personally, I would feel
Mm,
much
mm,
empowered and have more autonomy, and
mm.
it would work for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it's also depending on your character and your preferences. But I think a lot
Yeah.
of people, especially the younger people who want to manage their own time, who have a work-life balance, who don't want to sit in the office 9 to 5, and
Yeah.
I think they also can relate to
Yeah.
that idea.
And which is why I think that your mention about things like emotional intelligence and really people's, the level of people's kind of soft skill awareness is going to be even more important, because whether we like it or not, people are going to be working in ways that means that they have more autonomy and control over the things that they choose to do with their time, and so that they have a good sense of self, things like a good mindset in terms of being
Yes.
productive with their time, those whole things around kind of productivity, even integrity, personal effectiveness, and all those
Yes.
kind of things are really going to be of immense importance in terms of how people are able to work more successfully, not just for the benefit of themselves, but for the benefit of the organizations that they work for as well, and for those around them. Which is why this whole starting point of this topic was the perception of work, and particularly with regards to younger people like our generation X, like my son, for example, my daughter. How will they perceive the idea of work for themselves as they become adults? Your young children, how, what is gonna now be that perception for them of what work looks like? And so it's almost not going to be much, the emphasis almost is not going to be on what they're doing, but how they bring themselves to what
Yeah.
they do.